Somewhere in a box in your parents' house, there is a photo of you at age 2. You are laughing at something. Your hand is reaching for a dog, or a cake, or a stranger's face. You have no idea who that child is. You were there. You were fully alive in that moment. You cried, you laughed, you learned new words that same afternoon. And yet, you cannot recall a single second of it. Maybe you've tried to force it, closing your eyes, searching for a scrap of sound or color from before you were 3. Most people come up empty, no matter how hard they try. That's strange enough on its own. But the real answer for why this happens is far stranger than you were just too young. Your brain was not failing to record that day. It was doing something else entirely. Something so deliberate that scientists now believe it was necessary for you to become who you are. Ask yourself this. What is your very first memory? Most people land somewhere between the ages of 3 and 4. Before that, there's nothing. Not blackness, not a blur. Just an absence, as if the tape never started rolling in the first place. Sigmund Freud noticed this gap over a century ago and gave it a name. He called it infantile amnesia. Freud believed the missing years were hidden away, repressed, because of something shameful buried in early childhood. That particular theory has not held up well under modern research. But the phenomenon itself was real, and it has fascinated scientists ever since, long after his explanation for it was quietly retired. Here is what makes the gap so odd. 2-year-olds can talk. They recognize faces, they learn new words every single day, and they clearly form memories, at least in the short term. Ask a toddler what happened an hour ago, and they can often tell you exactly what happened. So the problem isn't that a baby's brain is somehow too simple to hold information. The problem is what happens to that information later. Psychologist Carole Peterson at Memorial University of Newfoundland spent years testing this directly. She interviewed young children about memorable events, things like emergency room visits or family vacations, then went back years later and asked those same children about the same events. The results were unsettling. By early adulthood, most of those memories were gone completely, even ones the children had described in vivid, specific detail just a few years earlier. So the memories were there. Researchers recorded them word for word in a child's own voice. In Peterson's studies, some children could describe an emergency room visit with striking accuracy just a year or 2 after it happened, right down to the color of a nurse's shoes or what their parents said in the waiting room. And then, later, when researchers came back and asked again, much of that same detail had simply dissolved. Something had erased it. For a long time, nobody knew what that something was. Then, in 2014, neuroscientists Frankland and Sheena Josselyn at the University of Toronto found a clue, and it came from an unlikely source, baby mice. Frankland and Josselyn were studying a process called neurogenesis, the birth of brand new neurons inside the brain. Most of your brain stops producing large numbers of new neurons after early childhood, but one region keeps generating them at a remarkably high rate during your first years of life: the hippocampus, the structure responsible for turning experiences into long-term memories. In their experiments, mouse pups with rapidly growing hippocampi couldn't hold on to memories for more than a few days. Adult mice, whose neuron growth had slowed down considerably, could remember far longer. Then the researchers did something clever. They artificially sped up neurogenesis in adult mice, and those adult mice started forgetting too, at the same rapid rate as the pups. That was the clue. New neurons don't just add extra storage space. They physically rewire the circuits around them, and older memories held in that shifting wiring get overwritten in the process, almost like renovating a room while the furniture is still inside it. Your hippocampus, when you were 2 years old, was under intense construction. It was growing faster than at nearly any other point in your entire life. Every new neuron that arrived was, in a sense, knocking down old walls to build new rooms. The memories from that period weren't lost because your brain was too weak to keep them. They were lost because your brain was too busy building itself to protect them. Here's where it gets stranger still. Psychologist Patricia Bauer at Emory University has spent decades mapping exactly how memory systems mature in early childhood. Her research shows that young children don't just forget more than adults, they encode memories differently in the first place. The brain networks responsible for stitching an experience into a coherent story, complete with a sense of time, place, and self, simply aren't fully